come while she was at her workbench, wiring the naked taxidermic form of an ermine onto a rock beside the skull of a crow. The plan was to have the skinless ermine looking down at his own hide, tacked to the rock. Her sculpture had a distinctive dark streak. When Celine wasn't solving cases, she made pieces from anything at hand, which often involved skulls. The year before, the window washer had been fascinated by her art, which was displayed throughout the open studio, and the next day he brought her a human skull in a bucket. "Don't ask," he said. She didn't. She covered it immediately in gold leaf, and it stood now on a pedestal by the front door, looking elegant. Now she felt like this ermine. She felt skinned and lost, without protection. Her own fur had been her family. She had Hank, of course, but a son, no matter how old, was someone to be protected, not the other way around. When the phone rang, she almost didn't answer it, but then she thought it might be Pete calling from up in the Heights, needing grocery shopping help. "Hi, Celine Watkins?" "Yes." "This is Gabriela Ambrosio Lamont." "Gabriela," she whispered, trying to place the name. "You don't know me. I went to Sarah Lawrence, class of '82. I saw the story about you in the alumni magazine, Prada P.I. Gabriela laughed, clear, bell-like. Celine relaxed. "That was silly," Celine said. "I mean, the title. I've never worn Prada in my life." "Chanel doesn't alliterate." "Right." Celine closed her eyes. The name was distinctive, and it sounded familiar. Hadn't the girl had her own small story in the magazine about a show of still-life photographs in a gallery in San Francisco? Celine seemed to remember a portrait of the woman and bits of biography. She was pretty, maybe partly Spanish. Her father had been a photographer, too, hadn't he? Famous and very charismatic. The story had interested Celine. "I remember you from an article." "Ha! The exclusive club of the alumni magazine profiles," Gabriela said. "Yes." Pause. "I hope it's okay that I called you, out of the blue." "Yes, of course." Celine had been in her business a long time. She knew that nobody ever just called out of the blue. They had been on a certain trajectory for a while. They deliberated. They picked up the phone. They were like the pilots of small planes approaching an airport who call the tower, finally, for instructions to land. What Celine didn't know was if she had the strength. It was 1 year and 1 day after the Twin Towers had fallen. She could still almost smell the char, still see the air gritty with ash, and remember how the wind blew bits of charred financial statements and post-it notes across the river, where they fluttered over the dock like lost confetti. She could not have imagined a sadder finale to a grim year. Her younger sister had died that May. She remembered how bright, how tender seemed the cottonwoods along the Big Wood River in Ketchum, Idaho, the morning Mimi left. She had helped her go. The handful of pills, the long kiss on the cheek. How she had walked down the drive, how the leaves spun in the wind, and how, when a gust came through, it swept the old trees to a darker green, like the hands of a harpist lifting a somber note off the strings. And then, in July, she got word that her older sister, Bobby, had a brain tumor. It was a flare-up of a cancer 5 years in remission. Celine went to Pennsylvania to visit, to help, and there was not much to do, as Bobby died within 3 weeks. It was almost as if the youngest sister's death had given the eldest sister permission to take the deep rest she had longed for. And then the first plane hit, and Celine went to her window and watched the plume of black smoke rise into a clear sky. She was riveted. She lived 50 feet from the pier in an old brick loft building kitty-corner to the river cafe. It was almost under the Brooklyn Bridge, Brooklyn side, 30 yards from the East River, and with the windows open she could hear the current rip and burble against the pilings of the dock. She pursed her lips and tried to get enough air. She did not move. Pete left her alone. When the second plane tore through the sister tower to the south, she shuddered as if it were she herself who had been slammed and ripped. Lying in bed that night while she cried silently beside him, Pete realized that Bobby was the North Tower and Mimi the South. And of course, the collapsing buildings were much more than that, too. They were a burning message that a certain world had passed. Her sisters had been the last of the family she'd been born into. Celine's inner and outer world mirrored each other.